Astrology is the myths of the stars and planets, telling the themes and plots of our lives. These stories come to us daily through our satellite, the Moon. She is constantly spinning astro news. Hi, I'm Mary Lynn LeBlanc with Moonwise. Today, I have with me in the studios of KSFR, Daniel Fiverson, monthly guest at Moonwise. Welcome back to the show, Daniel.
Oh, it's always so wonderful to be here. This is the highlight of my month.
Well, it's it's certainly a joy for me as well, especially when we have so much astrological activity and shifts going on during this time. We're going to talk a lot about Mars and Pluto because they're changing directions this weekend. They're going to go retrograde.
Yep.
So these two planets are related in so many different ways. Let's talk about that.
Yep. Mars and Pluto are a real pair. They're an astrological pair, and we can. First, we know Mars as the lower octave of Pluto. And so it comes to mind, how did that come about? We can go back to the traditional medieval or Hellenistic astrologers, and we know that Mars was the ruler of Scorpio, which Pluto later co-opted when he was discovered. So there's a relationship right there between the two. But there is a much deeper relationship. And that's based in our desires. Pluto is our unconscious desires. Mars is our conscious desires. I kind of like to say that when Pluto says jump, Mars says how high, because Mars takes his marching orders from Pluto. Pluto is our deepest emotional patterns, our deepest unconscious need for security. And it's Mars that actually acts on that. That's what we consciously pursue to be secure, to what it is that's important to us. The priorities come from Venus. Clearly, all the planets are working together. We can't take one, kind of laser cut one of them out and say that this is what's happening, because there's a synastry or a synchronicity between all of them.
But what you're also mentioning, that's just kind of, I want to highlight this, is how much most humans, all of us, operate off of unconscious energy.
Totally. We're not aware of our habitual emotional patterns. This is the Moon, which is your area of expertise. Mars and the Moon are our most conscious parts of our consciousness. The parts of our consciousness where we're most aware. The Moon is our emotions, and it's through our emotions that at any given moment we feel safe or we feel unsafe. Mars is the leading edge of our evolution because it's what we are consciously pursuing. It's the goal that we're chasing. It's what it is that we're after to achieve. So that's where our consciousness is really focused. And to a great degree, Mars is instinct. Mars is our core nature that. Again, it's like the tip of our nose. Everybody else can see it but us. It's kind of hidden from us. First house, Aries, Mars. There's an instinctual dynamic about it. I like to say, we come into the world head first, headlong, without even knowing if somebody will be there to catch us. That's Mars. That's our instinct. There's no forethought whatsoever. It's not a projection of any kind. It's total instinctual behavior.
Awesome. Well, let's get into these two planets together just a little bit more. I mean, you definitely pointed out very strongly that Pluto kind of directs Mars in some unconscious sort of way, but there are other kinds of relationships between these two planets. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
There is another relationship that really is part of evolutionary astrology. It's part of Jeff Green's work, but Jeff would say that we have 8 primary lifetimes in each cycle of lessons. Pluto is our cycle of lessons. Pluto is what we have brought with us from the past. And Mars is how we are, what we're choosing consciously to work on going forward. So there is the relationship between the two planets is that the phase relationship, they don't have to be an aspect, that we can divide the horoscope 360 degrees into 8 phases. same phases as the moon, as the lunations. And any two planets at any given time are in one of those relationships to each other, just like the sun and the moon are in the moon cycle. So there are 8 stations, if you would, that Mars can have in its journey, in its cycle with Pluto. And each one of those 8 stations reflects one primary lifetime. So if Mars and Pluto are 45 degrees apart, or somewhere close to it, if they're either at the end of new phase or they're in a crescent phase, then this indicates that they are in that first primary lifetime. And we can go around the entire cycle and we can look at that relationship and determine where they are.
Yeah, the relationship right now, as Mars is about to go retrograde, is like a balsamic phase. When you say these eight phases, are you referring to the traditional phases of the moon?
Yes.
So that would be the balsamic phase.
Yes.
That Mars is with Pluto. And so what you're talking about from an evolutionary perspective is if a person is born today, tomorrow, being in that phase, what does that tell us about how they're operating unconsciously and consciously?
Well, what the cycle itself is about is bringing what we're consciously pursuing into alignment with what our soul is hoping to attain. So certainly if our Pluto intention is to find spiritual enlightenment, I'll go right to the top of the tree. Chances are Mars is not going to be, out there looking for a BMW, a used BMW in the car lot. It's going to be looking for a teacher. So we're going to see a direct correlation. At a balsamic phase, we've come 7/8 of the way around the track. There are always going to be things in a balsamic phase that are left unfinished. The loose ends. The balsamic phase is the finishing up of those loose ends. It's whatever we weren't ready for or didn't want to do or was denied to us or for whatever reason was left undone comes up in a balsamic phase. And it's why the balsamic phase can be so intense, because these were the hardest things. This is what we left for last.
One of the ways in which I look at cycles of planets too, and by transits, is that we can have these many experiences of these different phases. And so we're all kind of experiencing a balsamic phase of Mars and Pluto, whether we were born during that time or not, but something that we may have begun to bring into consciousness through the actions of or the impulses of the Plutonian energy that we're corresponding to. We might be wrapping that up during this particular time. And, of course, Mars and Pluto together, as you described it, is more about doing the bidding of our evolution.
Right.
It could have other meanings.
Oh, I'm sure it has a wide range of meanings, sure.
Yeah. It could be the kind of energy that we put into regenerating something in our lives.
Right.
It could be the kind of energy that we put into dealing with oppression or manipulation in our lives. It has all these different kinds of meanings. And when you talk about evolutionary astrology, are you focusing primarily on the individual and what they've come to do and the issues, or do you actually get into what might be happening with this particular, was about 2.5-year cycle of Pluto and Mars, I believe? Do you get into it in that respect as well with evolution?
You mean from the collective view?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, absolutely, because the planet itself is in a state of evolution as well as in a constant state of becoming. And the planet or the country or the state or the community or the town, however you want to define what that collective is, what it is that's bigger than the individual, is also being progressed, if you would, because all of the individuals within it are changing. So the change occurs on both levels, and the ocean contains the wave just as the wave contains the ocean. There's a symbiotic relationship between the two. There's some symbiosis. And I think if, we could look at the political scene right now and the intensity of it and how so many people there's almost beyond discontent, there's almost a feeling of desperation among many people, among voters, people who have been disenfranchised perhaps for a long period of time. So again, I think this reflects Mars closing this cycle to Pluto where there is this compelling need to achieve something, to achieve whatever it is that they know in their heart they need for their own security. And again, that's going to be different for everybody. We're not looking at everybody having the same security basis, in their lives. For some people it's spiritual, for others it's material. And I think that what we're seeing perhaps is that division right now, where for some people it's their core survival is based on their finances, the economy, things that what's really hard and that's tangible. And for others there is a broader basis of security that's missing, where they feel that their freedom and their personal liberties are no longer protected. So it's not so much that you can give somebody all the money in the world, but if prejudice and injustice is what's happening, the money's not going to make them feel very secure.
Amen to that. All right. Well, you're listening to Moonwise here on KSFR 101.1 FM or streaming on the web at ksfr.org. I'm Mary Lynn LeBlanc with my guest Daniel Fiverson. We're talking about the planet Mars going retrograde this Sunday and Pluto going retrograde on Monday. We'll be right back after the Moon Minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to Moonwise. I'm Mary Lynn LeBlanc with my guest Daniel Fiverson. We're talking today about the planet Mars and the planet Pluto that are going retrograde the beginning of the week. And let's give our listeners, Daniel, a little bit of data just about that particular dynamic of going retrograde.
Sure, this will be helpful if you know your charts. These degrees that we're gonna list here, you can look at your chart and see how this is affecting you personally. So Mars is going to go retrograde at 8 degrees, almost 9 degrees of Sag on the 17th, and on June 29th it will go as far back as 23 degrees of Scorpio. So it's actually going to return to Scorpio for a brief period of time. This really augments this Pluto connection that we're talking about, because Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So we're really going to see these energies blend and intensify. We haven't really talked about Mars and Pluto in retrograde in the terms of the potential for violence, anger, war. I mean, these are the planets that bring that up. I'll just throw that out there. I don't make predictions. I certainly don't want to make any predictions, about these energies, but we can't just gloss over them either. The other thing that's significant with Pluto will go retrograde on the 18th, one day later. And again, I think it's so non-coincidental, it's so synchronistic that Pluto is actually stationed already, because Pluto moves so slowly, right, that even when Mars is retrograde, Pluto is just about ready to go retrograde. It might as well be retrograde. It's standing still on that same day, and actually is standing still for a couple of days before it turns supposedly turns backwards. And then Pluto will station direct on the 26th of September. It's quite a long retrograde cycle at just about 15 degrees of Capricorn. And that's Saturn's sign. And Saturn himself is also retrograde. So there's the tremendous retrograde energy here, where we're revisiting, relooking, re-examining all of any of the dynamics that have to do with Mars, Pluto, or Saturn. How was our life structured? What's our ethical judgment of right and wrong? What's our deepest need for security? What is it that we're actually pursuing in our lives? And it all comes down to meaning. where is the meaning in our lives? Because we've got a square from Mars to Neptune. Neptune is that ultimate meaning. And Mars priorities come from Venus, also our meaning. So at the basis of this is really the angst is that we're feeling this loss of meaning in our lives. We're feeling it politically, we're feeling it economically, we're feeling it just in terms of, perhaps where our own life path is going. Do we feel like we're making progress? Are we feeling fulfilled or joyful? Or are we kind of feeling stuck? And, there's nothing wrong with being stuck. I mean, it doesn't feel good, but, stagnation is what brings about change. When things come to a grinding halt and we really feel that stuckness, that's when we are motivated to get off the couch, turn off the television, and get out there and do get out there and do something about it. So all these factors are coming into play.
Well, I want to add one to that too. On the 28th, like 10 days after Pluto goes retrograde, Mercury will go retrograde in Taurus, another Earth sign like Pluto being in Capricorn. And so, this whole rethinking of how we're dealing with the destruction of the planet, the destruction of our ways of living, and or the lack of soul in SOUL in terms of how we interact with each other, with the planet, with the resources, etc. Because retrograde planets in general are going back over something, reconsidering it, looking at, what worked, what didn't work, what really might be done differently, what was heated, what wasn't heated. It's, no matter which planet it is, it's always that kind of opportunity to, ask ourselves, were those the best decisions, or is something else needed here?
Right, that's exactly right. And I'm glad you brought that up because Taurus is meaning. The second house is what's essential to us. It's where our priorities come from. So this really brings in this whole dynamic of where is the meaning in my life, where is the meaning where our country is headed, where is the meaning with what's happening, from our world view, if you would. The emanations reach out in all directions infinitely. And it certainly goes from the individual out into the collective.
I have to think, too, you mentioned earlier that Mars is going retrograde at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. And the Sabian symbol for that has to do with a mother leading her children up these steps. It's sort of like helping to get to another level of social interaction. Mm-hmm. And also in the sign of Sagittarius, developing one's life according to some cultural or spiritual or religious beliefs that actually, are meant to assist people, not to imprison people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truth. With Sagittarius is the search for truth. So it's finding, it's recognizing the contrast between the way that we are living and other ways of living, if you would. That's what travel does for us. Sagittarius is associated with travel. When we go to another country, we see another whole perspective. We see a different kind of government. We see different kinds of food. People dress differently. They speak another language, and they have a whole different lifestyle. And it gives us perspective on how we live, which again is a retrograde archetype, if you would, where we get perspective. We step back. We get some objectivity about it. We revisit it because we're seeing it, if you would, through the rearview mirror. We're seeing the results of it. We have some feedback, and we're going back to work on it again.
And perhaps trying to find a quieter, simpler space. You're reminding me of a friend of mine's son who's been living in Azerbaijan, and married a Russian woman there, and they have a child together. And they're considering, it's time to move on from the work he was doing there. And basically, the message was, we're looking for some place in the world where it's safe and peaceful to raise a child.
Good luck with that.
I know. But it's this whole notion of, how are we living?
Right, exactly. It's exactly right. It's almost as if, somebody's been asleep at the wheel, and now we're waking up and we're looking around and say, how the hell did we get to here? How did we get here? And now how do we find our way back?
Yeah. All right. So we only have a few more minutes left here, Daniel, and I'm not sure we covered everything that you wanted to say about Mars and Pluto. You're shaking your head. You have or haven't?
No, that's fine.
That's.
Yeah, we can't do it all.
We can't do it all. Well, we do have 5 minutes, so
Okay.
let me mention something about, since I mentioned the Sabian symbol for Mars, the Sabian symbol for Pluto going retrograde on Monday is, it has to do, I don't remember the exact words, but it has to do with running a tight ship, having high standards, something like a British warship or something of that sort, living according to these higher principles. And then combining that, when you put the two together, Mars and Pluto, it's like really the reexamination of our actions based on higher principles in our lives.
Right.
Coming back to that.
Yeah, hopefully we are. I mean, I think that, culturally we fall into like we get carried out to sea. I'm trying to think of an analogy. The tide carries us, in different directions. The current, we get caught in the current, perhaps, and that current is partially the collective unconscious. It's partially the media. We have so many influences in our lives that it's very easy to lose our focus. Do we actually have a mechanism by which we can come back and recenter and refocus? Because if not, that's how we find that we drift off course. And it's again, there's no guilt. It's not something that's criminal or anything like that. But this is what happens. We drift off course and we find out that we're just not headed in the direction that we hope to be going. And so we have a retrograde period, and that retrograde is how we get back on course. And we realign ourselves, we come back to center. But certainly, practices like meditation, or for some people it's prayer, or taking a walk in the woods, or, something to get recentered. It's really important to find some process, something in our lives that gives us the ability to find that center of ourselves again, and to get realigned with who we are and really where we intend to be.
So well said. Thank you. You're doing some public appearances of late. Tell us about that before we leave.
Yeah, actually, Steve McFadden, who's been on the show before, put this together, and he invited me to help him come for this inaugural event. One Wednesday a month, we're going to be doing an event at the Oxygen Bar in downtown Santa Fe, and it's going to be pretty much informal. Stephen wants to. We're going to start with some pranayama, some exercises, just to get everybody gathered. For many years there was a regular event here in Santa Fe called Star Talks. that was very well attended. Alan Oken and Heather Ron Robbins actually helped organize it many years ago.
Ariel Gutman.
And Stephen was often part of it. So we're bringing it back. Somehow it kind of dissolved and people moved away. But we've been working to regroup the community, bring the astrologers back together, the people in town who are interested in astrology. It's going to be pretty much an open forum, open discussion. I'm going to have a short presentation. Stephen's going to have a short presentation, but we're looking to bring out the community and get them involved and hear what they want to talk about and be able to reestablish this monthly event for astrology between astrologers and seekers.
And this is the second Wednesday of the month?
It
So
is.
we just missed one.
We just missed one. There will be another one in May.
In May.
And
where again is this?
The Oxygen Bar at 102 West Palace, downtown. It's up that tall flights of stairs. There's been
Palace? Are you sure that's not San Francisco Street?
Could be. The details are on my website, and if you can go to my website, www.evolutionaryastrology.com. There is a link there to subscribe to my newsletter if you would like to. All this information goes out on a regular basis through my newsletter.
That's great. You're also doing some workshops down in the Albuquerque area as well.
I just completed an amazing weekend with the NCGR, the National Committee for Geocosmic Research in Albuquerque. It was phenomenal. We had a great turnout. We did a public talk at the Crystal Dove in downtown Albuquerque Wednesday night. And then we did a workshop of Pluto and the lunar nodes on Saturday. It was phenomenal. Everybody had a great time, learned a lot. I'm looking to do some more events like this locally or maybe at a distance, yes.
Okay, so you'll let us know when those are coming up in the future.
Everything always comes out in my newsletter or a big thing on my website. You can follow me online very easily or on Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you, Daniel Fiverson, for being my guest today on Moonwise. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll be back next week with more Astro News.